It is 17 minutes after 6 on this Tuesday morning. If you've just joined us, it is Morning News Today. Now, high unemployment, growing income disparity and inequality are the major issues affecting the country. That's according to the Institute of Risk Management, South Africa's 5th edition risk report. Well, here to tell us more, we have the Institute's Berenice Francis to explain this rather detailed report. Berenice, good morning.
Morning.
And thanks for your time. Explain to us firstly this risk report that you do. Why is it done and how is it done? Yeah.
So the Institute of Risk Management is the accredited professional body for all risk managers in the country, in Southern Africa. So from a process perspective, we collect information. We do a full-on survey with our body and our members to understand what are the key issues that they're addressing and what are the key concerns that they're addressing. We collate that information. But what's more important, because it's a very South African report, we also ask, well, what should we be doing about it? So it's a combination of understanding what are the key concerns across both public and private sector, and what is the recommended actions we should be taking. So we ask, the survey actually constitutes 1,000 people, and then we have about 80 subject matter experts who give advice on how to fix or possibly treat some of the risks, and we also incorporate some quick wins. So it's used across South Africa, and it's used both in the public and private sector in boards and decision-making bodies to highlight risks that sometimes fall on deaf ears. And it's around understanding what the common thread is and what we should do as a collective, and that we're also not all alone in addressing some of the concerns.
Okay, so let's look at what what's popped up in the latest report. It's broken down into two sections. You look at the top risks of the country, country faces, and then industry's top 10 risks. Let's start with country first. What are our biggest problems?
So from a country perspective, what we use is we use our frameworks and we say, well, what is a risk? And we define a risk as uncertainty around reaching objectives. So we actually use the country's NDP as our objectives, and we ask all our managers, all our risk practitioners, and some non-execs, well, what are the key concerns around that? And the top risk that came out from a country perspective was around structural unemployment. And this has actually been a risk for the top risk for the last 2 years. And what we as the Institute of Risk Management are asking is, how do we move beyond the rhetoric? How do we move from talking to action?
And plans rather than actually putting them into
impact.
place.
Because we can't have risks that are known that we're not doing anything to move the needle about. So that's why it's so important to actually understand how can we together, or working together, change the outcome of the trend that we're seeing.
Okay, so that's a structurally high unemployment, growing income disparity and inequality. I mean, I look at that, Berenice, and I say, this is not something that we've only known about in the past 5 years of probably of doing this report. And how come we still see it as number 2 of the top 10 risks? And are we not doing anything? Do we just talk shop at the time, like you say, and people are not actually implementing?
So I think one of the concerns we have is that we all operate in silos. Our preface and our forward was actually done by Minister Pravin Gordhan, where he said, you know, as risk managers or risk professionals, why are we not influencing more leaders to act? Why is it so easy, so when we speak, for those risks to fall on deaf ears, that we're not working collectively? What is comforting, or what is positive about the report, is that it's consistent across all the industries we surveyed, that both public sector and government and the different levels of government, private sector as well as SMEs and independent consultants believe that as a collective we need to actually act.
Okay, so they're on the same page when it comes to that. So industry's top 10 risks?
So very similar. So there's about a 50% correlation around what their risks are, but they do bring in concerns around governance. So they speak around the governance and structures of the country we operate in, political uncertainty, and the industry-specific ones relate to digital. So, you know, are we ready as
cyber
attacks? Are we ready to take advantage of a fourth industrial revolution, AI, etc.?
Okay, and we're not, obviously, because it's still their concern. So we have a budget coming up tomorrow, Budget 2019. What do we do? Because, like you say, they come up with solutions. What do we need to be hearing tomorrow?
Sure.
Based on what you...
So I think there needs to be consistency. One of the, what we'd like to see is that, you know, the discussions that we've seen in Sonar, the discussions that the President has made promises on, actually is enforced through actually allowing budget to work through it. Because we know that from a tax perspective, that's the most efficient way of actually actioning things. So if you speak, but you don't allocate resources to it, nothing will happen. We'd like to see a bit more incentives around how we all work together, but also ensuring that we hold officials accountable when tax money is misspent.
Yeah.
And we'd like to see more of that.
Well, in the middle of everything that's happening with Eskom, and we're hearing everything coming out of state capture, you would imagine that those things would be what people want to hear. Their money's not gone to waste.
And what's important is we did a review of, say, the last 5 reports, and you know, we were starting to talk about water crisis in 2014-15, and yet we don't want to see what happened again. So all these risks that we speak about, we'd like to see tangible action. We'd like to see what are we contributing as well. When I say we, I'm talking about everyone, whether it's in the individuals, the private sector, and government, and we're working towards a common goal as opposed to just working against each other.
Okay, well, thanks very much. And undoubtedly, the Institute of Risk Management will be watching that budget speech very closely, and that's the Institute's Berenice Francis joining us here.